You know that moment at the checkout when the screen flashes a number higher than you expected? You stop, you double-check the cart, but nothing's unusual. Same beef, same coffee, same basics. The truth is, it's not you. It's the prices. This October 6, everyday foods are set to climb again. Beef, coffee, candy, sugar, eggs, and cheese, the very things that make up family dinners, morning routines, and holiday tables. Each one is being pushed higher by shortages, global pressures, and company markups. We can't afford to look away. Families on fixed incomes are already feeling the strain. Grandparents planning for trick-or-treat candy, or parents stretching every dollar at breakfast, they're all about to pay more. I don't want you caught off guard. Let's walk through these 6 foods one by one so you know what's coming and how to prepare before the next trip to the store. 1. Beef. Beef prices are climbing fast this October. The cattle herd is the smallest since 1951, and that tight supply is squeezing every step from pasture to packing line to the shelf. When fewer animals move, prices rise. That is the blunt, unvarnished reality showing up in the meat case. Government data backs up what you see on the sticker. In late summer, beef jumped more than 2% in a single month, and nearly 14% over the past year. The Department of Agriculture has flagged record cattle prices moving into fall. This matters because beef is not a luxury in many homes. It is Sunday roast crock-pot meals on busy weekdays, burgers for the ball game, and the holiday rib roast that gathers everyone around the table. When the price of those cuts leaps, it hits fixed incomes first and hardest. It also forces hard choices many families do not want to make. You can see the decisions happening. Shoppers trade ribeye for sirloin for chuck for round. Some cut portions and pad the plate with more sides. Others switch to ground and stretch it with beans, rice, or chopped vegetables. The small neighborhood butcher feels the strain too. Wholesale costs rise and retail has to follow. Even big stores cannot dodge the pressure when herds are this tight. There is a path through it. Start with cuts that give more servings per dollar. Chuck roast turns tender with thyme and low heat. Eye of round sliced thin makes lean sandwiches without breaking the bank. Flank and skirt love a simple marinade and cook in minutes on a weeknight. Learn 2 or 3 of these power cuts and rotate them. You will keep variety without chasing the pricier steaks. Next time your buys. Many chains launch midweek meat specials. If you can shop on those days, you often catch a real drop. Watch the front page of the circular. When a cut you use often dips below your target price, that is the moment to stock up. Bulk helps when done right. Family packs carry a lower price per pound. Bring them home, portion them into flat freezer bags, and label each with the cut and the date. Stack them so the oldest moves forward. Flat packs thaw quicker, which makes weeknight planning easier. A small chest freezer can pay for itself across a season if you buy only what you know you will use. Ground beef deserves its own note. It follows the same supply pressure, but it is flexible. Choose the lean to fat blend for the job, and remember that a little fat brings flavor. For chili meatloaf or stuffed peppers, you do not need the leanest option. You can also blend in chopped mushrooms or onions to stretch a pound without losing texture. No one at the table will feel shorted. Warehouse clubs can be a win, but not always. Keep a simple list of target prices for the cuts your family likes. Compare the club to the weekly sale at the local grocer. Some weeks the club wins by a lot. Other weeks the corner store beats it. The only way to know is to check. A pocket list turns guesswork into certainty. Think about menus that lean on slow cooking. Tougher, cheaper cuts reward patience and planning. A roast that cooks all afternoon can anchor several meals. Night 1 is slices with vegetables. Night 2 is shredded beef for sandwiches. Night 3 is hash or tacos with a handful of pantry staples. One purchase, many plates. There is one more force in the background. In a tight supply year, companies often try to hold margins by nudging prices or sizes. You may see smaller packages at the same price or slightly higher shelf tags on longtime favorites. That is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to slow down, read the label, and compare unit prices across brands and sizes. The cheapest option is not always the largest package. Let the math guide you. None of this points a finger. It is the plain picture of drought feed costs, herd decisions, and a supply chain with less room to breathe. The outcome is the number you face at checkout. Hold that line and keep an eye on the next aisle. Because if beef is this tight, your morning routine is next in line. Coffee has its own storm brewing, and the cup that starts your day may soon cost more than you expect. 2 coffee. Promotions have thinned bags are lighter, and the cafe down the street just raised prices again. Arabica costs have pushed to modern records this fall, and the shelf is moving in near unison. That is the shock up front. Coffee is not drifting higher on its own. It is being walked higher, rung by rung. The march starts far from your kitchen. A dry season or a late storm trims the harvest. Traders see risk and lift futures. Exporters redo contracts with premiums for quality certification, and the hard work of hauling beans from mountain roads to a port that might not have space. Insurance inches up, freight inches up. Storage fees tick each day a container sits. None of this touches your mug yet, but the slope is set. Roasters step in next. Small outfits hedge to buy time. Big brands do it too, only with larger shields. When those hedges expire and the new crop costs more, the decision arrives: shrink the bag, lift the tag, cut promotions, or some of each. A few ounces disappear. The label still promises familiar comfort. The price per cup rises even when the shelf tag barely blinks. Then the retailers take their turn. Coffee lives inside a category plan that was drawn months ago. Price ladders sit there like a staircase with rungs at points shoppers recognize. When costs rise, the item rarely moves to some gentle in-between. It jumps to the next rung because that is how the system is built. Promotions morph from true savings into bundles that sound friendly but save less. The shelf looks busy. The receipt tells the truth. There is also the quiet geography of price zones. The same can sell for more in one zip code than another, tuned by software that watches income traffic and what rivals do. No one needs a meeting to say move together. When one player nudges up and holds, others often follow within days. It is not a plot you can point to, but to a shopper, it feels like a flock turning in the same sky. Packaging helps the climb. The lid fits the same, the bag stands the same. The claim on cups brewed stays sunny, yet air fills a little more space and coffee fills a little less. In cafes, another math runs the counter. Rent escalates. Milk cups and syrups creep upward. Payroll climbs a notch. A few cents at each step turn a small into a little more and a large into a line you swore you would never cross. Owners stretch loyalty cards and swallow margin where they can, but in the end, the board changes. Regulars adapt. They visit less often, skip the pastry, split a drink on the walk, or tip a bit less than their heart wants. The room keeps its hum, though softer. There are questions worth asking even if they never turn into finger-pointing. When weather improves for a season, why do promotions return so slowly? When shipping clears, why do bags stay smaller? When futures fall back from a spike, why does the circular still push bundles instead of clean markdowns? None of this demands outrage to make sense. Each step protects someone's margin. Farmers guard against storms. Exporters guard against currencies and ports. Roasters guard against volatile beans. Retailers guard against weak categories and lost foot traffic. The protection stack until the weight rests with the person holding the receipt. That person is you. So the ritual bends. You switch brands not because you want to, but because the new one sits below a line you set in your head. You scoop a touch less and call it fine. You brew at home more often and treat the cafe like a small holiday. You are not giving up your comfort, you are threading it through a tighter world. If there is a hidden thing here, it is the silence of coordination without a call. Contracts, hedges, freight quotes, pricing ladders, and planograms, all doing their part, nudging the cup you hold to a different place on the map. It's just a system that climbs quickly and floats down slowly, and a shopper who learns to read between the lines. Steam rises. The mug warms your hands. The taste is familiar, if a little thinner. You understand more about how it got here than you did yesterday. That knowledge does not sweeten the cup, but it steadies the hand that lifts it. 3 candy. Candy was supposed to be safe. Same bright bags, same smiles at the door, same little ritual that tells kids the night belongs to them. But this October, a lot of families are opening those bags and feeling something colder than fall air. Prices are higher, packages are lighter, and the timing is not an accident. It lands right when the bowls come out. Here is what sits under the pretty wrappers. Cocoa crops in West Africa stumbled after heat and disease, and global buyers pushed up futures to protect themselves. Freight and insurance added another layer. None of that is a secret. What feels like betrayal is what came next. Big makers did not just pass along costs. They used the moment to reset the entire staircase. Smaller bags at the old price, new bags at a higher price, fewer real promotions, more bundle offers that move volume without giving real relief. The shelf looks cheerful, the receipt does not. You can see the pattern if you slow down. A label keeps the same color and font you trust, but a few ounces go missing. The claim about how many pieces per bag stays sunny even when the serving size quietly shrinks. The word share gets bigger on the front, while the share itself gets smaller in your palm. It is legal. It is common. And in a month built on joy, it stings. There are facts that back up the feeling. Cocoa has been at historic highs this year. Public comments from brand leaders have talked about price actions in the low double digits. Trade press has tracked downsized bags, tighter discounts, and fewer buy one get one deals. None of this reads like a villain speech. It reads like a playbook. Raise the list price where the shopper will tolerate it. Trim the pack where the shopper will not. Let algorithms nudge shelf tags based on zip code traffic and competitor moves. If a rival inches up and holds, others follow within days. No smoke-filled room, just a flock turning at once. Retailers are not bystanders. Candy lives inside seasonal plans drawn months ahead. There are price ladders with rungs everyone recognizes. When costs spike, items do not land gently between rungs. They jump to the next one because that is where the plan has space. The ad still shows a smiling pumpkin and a bold discount. The small print reveals the catch must buy 2 or 3 or a family pack. That is not really a deal once you compare the unit price. The store gets the basket ring it needs, and you get the feeling you are paying more to stand still. If you want a softer conspiracy, look at timing. Suppliers know October is when candy moves. That is when people shrug and say it is for the kids and toss an extra bag into the cart. Shrinkflation often shows up right before that moment. Seasonal packaging masks it. Holiday buzz masks it. By the time anyone compares last year's bag to this year's, the old size is gone from the shelf. You cannot line them up to see the difference. You just feel it when the bowl fills halfway sooner than it used to. For households on tight budgets, that half bowl hits hard. Grandparents who loved handing out generous scoops start counting pieces to make sure the kids at the end of the line still get something. Parents swap to off-brands that once felt like a gamble. Some neighborhoods turn the porch light off early and hope the little ones made it by before the candy ran out. No one is angry at the kids. The frustration sits with a system that manages to lift prices fast and lower them slow, that finds new ways to charge more without saying it out loud. To be fair, not every company is cynical. Some locked in cocoa earlier and held the line for a while. Some offered real promotions in select chains. A few even explained the changes plainly. Those moves help. They also show how much choice the industry actually has. If a handful can resist the full squeeze, then the rest are not helpless. They are choosing where to protect margin and where to protect tradition. There are questions worth asking without pointing a finger. When cocoa eases for a season, will we see the old sizes come back, or just new flavors at the higher price? When shipping loosens, will the unit price drop, or will limited edition packaging keep the ladder high? When a maker tells investors about pricing power, what does that phrase look like in a plastic bowl on a front porch? The answers matter because they tell us whether this year is an exception or a new baseline. The trust that sameness equals fairness has been broken. The bag looks the same, the brand sounds the same, the holiday feels the same. But the value inside is not the same, and that difference arrives right when families most want to be generous. 4. Sugar and sweets. Sugar and sweets do not shout for attention. They ride home in the cart like routine bag for cookies box for a birthday frosting for the bake sale. The surprise this fall is not loud. It is quiet and precise, like someone tightening a belt one notch at a time. Start with the calendar. Bakeries and home kitchens lean into cooler weather. Grocers know it. Suppliers know it. Price lists and promotions are drawn months ahead so the aisle can capture that seasonal pull. When costs rise upstream, diesel packaging, resin labor at refineries. Those lists do not bend in the middle, they click to the next preset step. You do not see the step until your hand reaches the shelf. Sugar itself splits into two worlds, cane and beet. Weather and planting decisions move one. Energy and factory downtime move the other. A refinery that pauses for maintenance pushes more weight onto the remaining plants. Freight rates nudge the final cost for bags that travel farther inland. None of this looks like headline drama. It looks like pennies stacking into dollars before the label even meets the printer. By the time the package appears, the changes are surgical. The paper feels thinner. The gusset folds just a little deeper. Powdered sugar settles lower in the box. A cake mix stands the same height on the shelf, yet lists a smaller net weight in fine print that does not share the front. Frosting claims the same coverage, but the recommended slice is shaved down. Nothing illegal. Nothing that sets off an alarm. Just 100 tiny edits that land in your mixing bowl. Promotions change shape too. Straight markdowns give way to multi-buy deals and family-size offers that sound generous until you run the unit math. Some chains let pricing software tune the tag by neighborhood, measuring what a market will accept and adjusting by inches. A bakery aisle in one zip code holds steady, while the same items 2 towns over tilt upward. It does not feel coordinated, it feels uncanny. There is a human ledger running alongside the corporate one. A grandparent pulls a stained recipe card and realizes the bag will not carry the season like it used to. A parent agrees to bake for the fundraiser, then trims the list after seeing the total climb before butter and eggs even hit the cart. The tradition goes on, but it loses a little width at the edges. One less tray for neighbors, a thinner slice for late arrivals. If you listen to the trade, the language is clinical. Input costs, category health, price realization. It is the same vocabulary that turns generosity into a line item. A brand raises list price where loyalty is strong and trims content where loyalty is weaker. Private labels shadow the move with a lag, catching shoppers who step down but will not quit the habit. Limited flavors arrive to justify the rung that used to belong to the regular box. There is a softer suspicion in the timing. Size changes often arrive in seasonal packaging where comparison is harder. By the time winter clears and plain boxes return, memory has blurred. You cannot hold the old and the new side by side. You only notice that the bowl empties sooner and the pantry list needs one more line. Fairness does appear in small pockets. Some grocers push back and fund real discounts for a week or two. A few manufacturers explain the change in plain words and let shoppers decide. Those moments matter because they prove the market still has choices. If a handful can show restraint is possible. No one needs a villain to feel the turn. Farmers hedge a risky harvest. Refineries protect thin margins. Distributors build buffers against delays. Retailers manage categories that pay the light bill. Each step guards itself first. What remains rolls downhill into a kitchen that measures love in cups and teaspoons. You can still cream butter and sugar on a cold afternoon. You can still frost a sheet cake and write a child's name with a shaky hand and a smile. The meaning does not leave, but the cost of keeping it has changed, and that knowledge now sits beside the mixing bowl like an extra ingredient. 5 eggs, more than 10%. That is how far retail egg prices climbed over the past year by late summer, according to recent government data. And since 2022, tens of millions of birds have been culled during waves of avian influenza, a quiet fact that keeps cracking through supply every time the virus resurges. Add the calendar pressure of holiday baking and breakfast casseroles, and October becomes a month where a simple dozen stops feeling simple. Eggs used to be the anchor of thrift. When meat felt dear, you reached for a carton and made dinner work. That is why this squeeze lands with a different sting. It is not just the cost, it is the way a fallback now feels uncertain. People who once said we will just do eggs now pause at the case, scan the tags, and count the week in their heads. A staple that promised stability now behaves like a flighty market item. The path behind the price is not mysterious, but it is relentless. When bird flu hits a layer flock, whole barns come down at once. Supply takes a sudden step lower while demand barely flinches. Wholesale prices can slide for a few weeks when producers rebuild, or when promotions go quiet. But retail tends to lag on the way down and race on the way up. Processors and chains write contracts in blocks. When the new block reflects higher costs, the shelf moves with it. When costs ease, the feather falls slowly. There is also the rhythm of the season. Bakeries, schools, and home kitchens all reach for more eggs as the weather cools. Grocers map that surge months in advance. Price ladders sit ready and items jump to the next rung, rather than hover in between. Promotions turn from clean markdowns into multi-buy offers that look generous but tighten the unit price. The display says celebration. The receipt keeps its own counsel. What complicates the feeling is how visible the product is. You can see every crack and spot through the clear lid. You can count what you are paying for. So when cartons edge up by a handful of cents week after week, it is not abstract. It is a breakfast plate, a cookie tray, a pan of cornbread, all running the same small toll. In some neighborhoods, the tag moves faster than in others, guided by software that reads income bands and competitor moves. It does not need to be sinister to feel uncanny. The industry's language is calm. Biosecurity, depopulation, restocking. These are necessary steps to protect flocks and keep food safe. But they also mean gaps that consumers fill with patience and cash. A plant that shifts from large to medium grades to stretch output can keep shelves full without lowering the line on the register. A brand that trims a cent or two when wholesale dips can point to relief while holding a higher baseline than before the shock. Trust and betrayal live close together here. Eggs have always signaled resourcefulness breakfast for dinner, a casserole that feeds many a pie that tastes like memory. When that symbol turns costly, it feels like a promise was bent. Not broken by a villain, but bent by a system that protects itself first. Farmers guard their flocks against a virus that does not care about holidays. Distributors guard against sudden spikes. Retailers guard a category that has to look full every day. Everyone guards something. The guarding stacks up. There are facts worth watching without turning them into targets. When disease reports quiet down for a stretch, does shelf pricing ease in weeks or in months? When wholesale softens heading into late fall, do promotions come back as clean cuts or as buy more to save math? When a chain runs a sharp special for a weekend, is it a signal or a one-off to pull traffic? The answers tell you whether the old anchor is finding its weight again. In the meantime, the carton sits where it always sat, above the butter and beside the milk. You open it, check for cracks, and feel the small lift of relief when nothing rocks. The number on the tag may be higher, but the reason you reached for it has not changed. It is still the ingredient that turns a few simple things into a meal, the binder that holds a family recipe together. Prices rise and drift, viruses surge and fade, calendars turn. The pan warms and the kitchen smells like breakfast, and for a moment the world steadies. 6 Cheddar. Retail cheddar set a record in late summer, and the dairy index rose again month over month. Over the past year, cheese prices climbed by high single digits nationwide, with sharper moves in certain regions where freight and labor hit harder. Inventories tightened into early fall, and holiday trays, casseroles, and game day spreads are pulling demand forward. That is the picture, plain and fast. The chain behind it is simple to name and slow to fix. Milk checks paid to farmers rose as feed and fuel stayed high. Plants faced higher wages and maintenance. Packaging costs edged up. Freight kept a steady grip. When contracts reset, list prices stepped to the next rung rather than stopping halfway. Promotions shifted from clean cuts to multi-buy offers that look friendly but protect margins. Shoppers see the same block on the same shelf spot and assume sameness equals stability. It does not. The sameness is design, the change is inside the sticker. Cheese is not a luxury in many homes. It anchors sandwiches, covers casseroles, finishes soups, and turns plain vegetables into dinner. That is why these moves land harder than a chart suggests. A family that once grabbed a couple of blocks now calculates slices per meal. A grandparent who made a tray for every gathering trims the spread and hopes the last arrival still sees something left. None of this is anger. It is the quiet arithmetic of a tighter season. There's also the calendar effect. Grocers map October through New Year months ahead. Price ladders wait like a staircase. When costs rise, items jump to the next step. When costs ease, they drift down like a feather. Private labels follow brands with a small lag, catching shoppers who step down but refuse to give up the ritual. Limited flavors show up right where the old price point used to live, making the new rung feel festive instead of firm. If you look upstream, the signals are mixed but readable. Milk production held broadly steady in several key regions through late summer, even as culling earlier in the year kept a floor under prices. Spot markets for cheese and butter swung more widely than retail, which means the shelf reacts fast to spikes and slow to dips. Distributors protected service levels by building a little extra slack into delivered prices, a shield that does not vanish the moment the risk fades. All those small cushions stack on the way to your cart. It is fair to ask the quiet questions without pointing at villains. When spot prices soften for a stretch, how many weeks pass before shelf tags truly follow? When promotion budgets return, do they fund real discounts or bundle math that moves volume without lowering the unit cost? When a brand tells investors it has pricing power, what does that promise look like on a family lasagna night? These are not traps. They are the test of whether a tough year becomes the new baseline or just a chapter. Betrayal here is not a speech. It is the moment sameness stops meaning fairness. The brick looks the same, the aisle looks the same, the meal plan looks the same. But the value inside has shifted, and it arrives right when people gather more, not less. That gap between what our eyes expect and what the receipt delivers is where trust thins. And yet there are honest, bright signs to hold. Milk yields tend to firm as weather cools. Spot cheese can and often does ease after autumn spikes. Co-ops and a handful of chains have already piloted straight-up price cuts on core blocks when costs allow, proving the staircase can move both ways. Warehouse clubs sometimes run genuine per-pound deals on basic cheddar and mozzarella into November. Regional makers lean on simple packaging and local routes to shave pennies that bigger players cannot reach. None of this erases the squeeze, but it shows the market is not a one-way road. So keep the picture clear and the hope grounded. The data says cheese rose fast this year for real reasons and a few engineered ones. The same data also shows cycles, not destiny. Families will still grate a handful over soup, still layer a pan for Sunday, still pass a plate across the table with a smile. Prices rise and settle, rungs move up and slowly down. What lasts is the meal you make and the people who share it. We have walked through beef, coffee, candy, sugar, eggs, and cheese. 6 foods that touch nearly every American table. Each one has carried its own rise in price, its own hidden shift, its own quiet toll. And yet the story is not only about strain, it is also about resilience. Markets move in cycles. Herds rebuild, crops recover, ships unclog. What rises fast has a way of settling even if the feather falls slowly. Already, some stores are pushing real promotions. Some producers are signaling relief as costs ease. And in kitchens everywhere, families are still finding ways to make meals matter. The bowls may be lighter this October, but the traditions are not. The sound of children at the door, the smell of bread from the oven, the comfort of coffee at dawn, those remain. Prices shift, Seasons turn. What lasts is the spirit that keeps us gathering. And in that spirit, better days always find their way back.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage litigation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analyzes made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.